Not spare his own Son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? Romans chapter 8, verse 32. We often think that what is contained in the Word is the sum total of what God will do for us, but it is not. In a sense, God limited himself when he recorded his Word for us. He didn't include all that he is and all that he can do because he is infinite. While we are on earth, we cannot comprehend or receive what he has planned for us ultimately. We cannot fathom the capacity of God, but in heaven, there are no limits. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20 through 21. In heaven there is no yesterday and no tomorrow. There is only right now. The right now situation needed Jesus there in the auditorium, and that is where he was. He walked on stage to thunderous praise, worship, and adoration that seemed to go on forever. It was glorious. Jesus stood and looked at the people so lovingly. It was wonderful how he just looked at them and loved them. You could feel the Shekinah glory love that came out of him. It was awesome. Once again, words fail. Slowly, the people quieted down, and a holy hush came over the auditorium. Jesus was about to speak. Suddenly, he began to speak in a deep bass voice, the sound I have heard so often, like rushing waters, metallic. Refer to Ezekiel chapter 43, verse 2, Revelation chapter 1, verse 15. I do not know what he said. I was not allowed to remember it. But I do know the topic was eternity and what it means to God and what God has in store for his people. It was awesome. 13. Mysteries of God. How unsearchable God's judgments and his paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Romans chapter 11, verses 33 through 34. As you might imagine, I had many questions. There were things I wanted to know. For example, I saw other levels of heaven that I didn't understand. When we started floating up into the sky, another level of heaven appeared with ground, buildings, and sky. But I couldn't see it from the first level. Other lands, oceans, and seas. Supernaturally, I knew that there were other continents, islands, freshwater oceans, and seas far away. The seas are large bodies of water surrounded by land, but open to the oceans. I was not allowed to know anything about them, but I knew they existed. To me, heaven seemed like a very large planet, millions of times the size of Earth. Things there were tangible, but not physical. Infinite layers. If heaven is a planet, then it's God's personal planet. And if heaven is God's personal planet, then it is multi-layered, as I mentioned before. No matter where I was, however, I could see the throne of God off in the distance. It's the very center of the universe, the center of all existence. That's where everything began. It is awesome. I saw only 4 of these layers, but they seemed to go on to infinity. How big is God and how big is his universe? There are vast places in heaven where people will never go or see. Additional questions. For some reason, I could talk to only a few people. There were streets that I wanted to walk down in order to look at other things, but I was not allowed. There were buildings that I couldn't enter. I was told that there were some buildings people would never be allowed into. Again, I marveled at the children. They were so advanced and yet still children. Apparently, even in heaven, people grow at different rates. I wondered where the lumber came from for the buildings, because no tree has ever been cut in heaven. Who made the bricks? What was made in the factories? They were huge. I learned that the diadem trees were made before the creation of the earth. I thought to myself that I could find out how old the earth is by asking how old the diadem trees are. That was to remain a mystery. I was not allowed to know. But they were miles in diameter. Had they been growing since the beginning of creation? Or were they made that way? It was a mystery to me how the animals communicated. There were birds singing Amazing Grace. I knew every language along with a heavenly language, and I could speak to anyone with perfect understanding. How could this be? There were people there who had not died yet. I have heard others say that about heaven. I saw them, and I wondered about this mystery. Continents, oceans, transparent buildings full of people, kitchens without cooking, factories without power lines, angels with supernatural strength. The mysteries went on and kept growing. I wanted to know, but was not allowed to know. I knew there was something, but what it was, I didn't know. I asked and asked the angels who were guiding me. Regularly they told me, "It is not for you to know at this time." Finally, after many questions about the mysteries I wanted to understand, the angel on my right, who was doing most of the talking, looked at me and sternly said, "The mysteries of God are none of your business." 14. Prophetic Heaven. I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. Revelation chapter 6, verse 2. There are areas in heaven that are prophetic. They depict things to come. I saw the black tornado of judgment. I saw revival and judgment. There was a prophetic area that had a landscape that looked like Colorado, with mountains, trees, rocks, and rivers. It had a white pine pulpit. 2 fists came through the sky between the Shekinah glory. The right hand was gold, God's blessing. The left hand was steel, God's judgment. 7 prophetic signs. I saw the falls of God's glory, one stream of water falling into vapor on earth. We on earth can rise up to that level. We can rise into the mist of the falls of God's glory. And I saw the tidal wave, the last great move of God. It was 7 tiers tall. Prophetically, I was told 7 signs. 1. The last great move of God will be in out-of-the-way places, day and night. 2. Signs and wonders will increase and be fought against. 3. Laws of physics will be suspended so that the miraculous can flow. 4. Laws of time and space will be made known to men. 5. Knowledge of man will increase and never be based on fleshly things. 6. 7-fold tidal wave, the last great move of God breaking on the shores of eternity. The greatest part will be poured out in rural areas. I seek my bride in humble places. I was born in a stable. 7. Awareness is given my people in days and weeks just before my return. Mass multitudes will be involved in this revival, which will be through people who give all praise to the Lord. It is coming to root out and destroy the phony. It will keep the faithful, and it will be the introduction to the coming of Christ. Amphitheaters of promises. I saw Abraham's amphitheater. It was like a football arena, only hundreds of times larger. There was a cloud in the playing field area. In the cloud, I could see all the promises that have come to pass for and because of Abraham. The promises were for the entire world, not just for the Jews. Refer to Acts chapter 2, verses 38 through 39. There were what looked like 2 to 3 million seats with names on them. People had specific promises related to David's throne and the lineage of kings. Each of the patriarchs had an amphitheater. The angels helped people to remember the promises. On the way to the throne, I saw the amphitheater of David. I didn't go into his building, but I knew about it when I went by. Somehow, I sensed in my spirit. I knew. In heaven, you just know things. That was where David and his descendants went to see their promises coming to pass. But everyone is welcome. I saw a building in the shape of a castle, like a cornucopia or a horn of plenty. It was a prayer center. Angels were traveling in and out of the archway at the speed of light. To go through the archway was to go into the presence of God. The angels were carrying golden censers that carried prayers. They held them by the bowls of the censers. The prayers are precious cargo and are treated as such. No prayer goes unanswered, even wrong prayer. The prayers are brought before the face of God. Instantly, the angels go back for more. Fields of supernatural supply. I was taken to an area where I looked down upon what looked like millions and millions of acres under cultivation. There are huge fields of grain in heaven that are constantly moving in the breeze. They are a supernatural supply for others of various kinds. There is a heavenly harvest that is prophetic. At one time in my grandfather's life, he had some land that he had set aside to pay tithes. When he didn't have cash, he used the income from the crops grown on that land to support his church. A drought came. Corn wouldn't grow. Beans wouldn't grow. So he planted wheat in this land because he determined that wheat would grow in pretty dry circumstances. That year of drought, the tithe land produced stalks of wheat that were 7 feet tall. The people in the area saw and could not explain what had happened except that it was the hand of God. Some said it was a species of wheat they had never seen before. The harvest from that field by itself filled the local grain elevator. That is the wheat I saw in heaven. I saw what seemed like thousands and thousands of trees filled with fruit. Multitudes of people were coming and picking fruit and taking it away in baskets. They took it to their homes in heaven. There is also a bank in heaven, our bank. This is how it works. Every time you give anything, it is recorded in heaven. Angels go to a doorway with a slip. They receive golden coins and bring them to earth. The coins are changed to what we need on earth. These are supernatural finances. Horses in heaven. The book of Revelation tells us that the Lord will return riding a white horse. Refer to Revelation chapter 6, verse 2, Revelation chapter 19, verses 11 through 16. I have often wondered about that. What would a white horse from heaven actually look like? I was taken to an area where there were supernatural horse-like creatures. Some of them had wings. Some had abilities that we don't have on earth. They could walk on the air if they needed to. I saw thousands of chariots and beautiful horses to pull them. All the horses I saw were entirely white. They had red hoofs, fiery crimson red hoofs, and huge nostrils. They were about 10 to 15 times bigger than the biggest horses I have ever seen on earth, and they were all muscle, no fat. There was no horse byproduct to clean up, and I don't think they ever ate. They were there for a specific purpose. Some of it had to do with the rapture of the church. The prophet Elijah was taken up to heaven in a fiery chariot. Refer to the second book of Kings, chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. And I can tell you there was a chariot there that was the Lord's. It was bigger and nicer than the rest, and it was pulled by the most awesome steed. There were other supernatural animals also. I saw a beast that had the body of a giant bull, the neck of a camel, and the head of a horse. An angel was sitting on it. I was not told its purpose.